Michael, starting with Manchester United, just a bit of an update on any transfers, news. What can you sort of tell us is the latest?
Yeah, I'm expecting a bit to happen between now and Friday's deadline. Certainly expecting Dean Henderson to leave Manchester United and Bayern Dier, the goalkeeper from Fenerbahce, to join. That one looks pretty likely to happen. I think that United will probably get a left back across the line. Obviously, they're in the market now for another left back after the injury to Luke Shaw. Obviously, Tyrell Malacia already injured from earlier in the summer, and of course, United allowed Alex Telles and Brandon Williams to leave before these injuries. So obviously had a bit of a nightmare, a bit of a difficult situation for United. So that's what I expect to probably happen. In terms of any bigger things, I mean, look, I keep saying it, United need to sell players before they can bring anyone in. They don't have the resources to spend big money. I think that, Harry Maguire looks like he's going to stay. There's no big interest from Anthony Martial. And I think the only one that potentially there could be a bit of movement on is Scott McTominay. But if I had to guess right now, I suspect he will stay as well. But again, not 100% sure on that. And I think if McTominay goes, they'll try and bring in another midfielder. I think Ten Hag certainly wants to bring in another midfielder, but as I say, United have been limited with that. Gravenberch is one they're interested in. Amrabat as well. A lot of talk yesterday about Højbjerg. I think that one looks unlikely, if I'm honest. But yeah, there's just a lot going on at United in terms of that. I think it's truthfully honest, turned into a pretty disappointing window for them. Their inability to sell has basically impacted them throughout the window. And I think that, they're just their inability to sell important players for big money is just holding them back and is therefore reduced the finances. I think finances in general are a worry. United used to dwarf other clubs in terms of income, in terms of sponsorship. That is simply not the case anymore. There's all the issues around the Glazers still, There are concerns at United, I still think, really. So overall, I think it's turned into quite a disappointing window for United. Let's see if they can add anything in the final days. But I do think ultimately United fans will feel a bit underwhelmed by it all.
Arsenal up next in the Premier League for Manchester United. Now, looking at the results so far, they probably shouldn't have beaten Wolves, and they did. They probably shouldn't have beaten Forest, really, from being 2-0 down, and they did. And then they lost to Spurs. So maybe if you're looking deeply into it, it's not been the ideal start. But one thing we touched on last season was the consistency in Ten Hag's side, and that's fact already as well. Arsenal away is a huge test for any side, but if they are to go and get a result there, things could start to suddenly look positive. However, on the flip side, if they get thoroughly beaten, it could be quite worrying for Ten Hag. What's your thoughts going into this one?
Yeah, obviously goes without saying, it's going to be a really difficult game. They are the side who are second, finished second in the league last season. I've had a good start this campaign. Probably will be disappointed to drop points against Fulham, but 7 points for your opening 9 is certainly a pretty respectable start. United, you're right, they've had 3 really disappointing performances, but then are sitting with 6 points. So, I think if this was Manchester City, we'd be sitting saying that they always find a way to win. When it's United, the people can be a bit critical at times, but look, I do think it's justified. The start of the season has obviously been hugely impacted by injuries as well. And in the last week, they picked up 3 fresh ones with Varane, Shaw and Mount. That really is going to impact them going forward, I think, over the next, certainly 3 or 4 weeks, but probably longer term, if I'm honest. It'll impact them on Saturday or Sunday against Arsenal as well. I think it's going to be a difficult game. I fully expect Arsenal are going to win. If I'm honest, I just think Arsenal are in a better place at the moment. United, there is a bit of just a bit of, I feel there's quite a lot of negativity around at the moment. It's amazing how quickly Manchester United becomes a circus and chaos really, so quickly. And yeah, it doesn't feel like a particularly happy, healthy place at the moment. As I touched on earlier in the transfer bit, but I think that, whoever plays left back, be it Diogo Dalot or if there's a new player who comes in to try and mark Saka, that's going to be very difficult and kind of a big game, I suppose, for them. I think in midfield that They will struggle with Arsenal's power, with their fluidity, with their ability to keep the ball. I think that's going to be difficult. I think that the plus point will be if they can start Anthony Martial and keep Marcus Rashford out left. I think he just looked much better there at the weekend. And it'll be interesting to see if Rasmus Højlund's involved in any form for United as well. Could be back in time to make his debut for the club. Obviously signed in the summer, but hasn't been able to play yet as he arrived with a slight injury. So we'll see in that one. But I'll be at the Emirates on Sunday, looking forward to it. But as I say, I'm predicting an Arsenal win if I'm honest.
Michael, just issue us a bit of an update on Manchester City. Obviously, Akanji getting a knock against Sheffield United. They did come away with 3 points in that game, but what's the latest you can tell us? And is there any expected deals or more ongoings you can see before Friday's transfer deadline?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big one is going to be Matheus Nunes from Wolves. If they can get that one across the line, if they can get that one sorted. City are adamant that they're not going to overpay for the player. Wolves obviously rejected the first offer and are waiting now for City to come back. It's just whether City deem him worthy of paying the sort of money I think Wolves are asking for. City are, I think they're certainly a bit wary of their midfield options with De Bruyne out. I think they certainly want to bring in another one, but they are very wary of, I suppose, the perception of them that they overpay for players, that they spend so much money. I think they're just wary as well. That I think in their eyes, they feel that the teams try and take them for basically as much money as possible, something City refused to do. I think it was something Pep Guardiola touched on during a couple of weeks ago as well. So I think that'll be the big story. I think João Cancelo will move on as well before the deadline. And other than that, I think in terms of big news, that could be it. I mean, I saw talk about Cole Palmer as well. Personally, I think he's probably going to stay at this stage. I wouldn't say that with 100% certainty, but I suppose that's one other story. And then perhaps James McAtee, whether there's a couple of clubs interested in taking him on loan, whether City will let him go. But I think it's going to be a pretty quiet end to the window in terms of City. Slightly underwhelming window, I think, from City, if I'm honest. Obviously, I've let quite a few players go. And the replacements are... I don't know. I mean, I think Kovacic and Guardiola will be good incomings. Doku's obviously a bit more of a he's going to have to grow into the team, I think, a little bit. But they maybe look a tiny little bit weaker than last year, maybe particularly with the injury to De Bruyne. But look, Guardiola, you always back him to find a solution and find a way around things. So yeah, while it may be perhaps a slightly underwhelming window, I do think City will certainly are still massive favourites for the title in my eyes this year.
And Fulham at home up next in the Premier League. What do you see from that? Is it more of a simple solution this time round than when they allowed Sheffield United to sort of get back into that game? Can you see a bit more of a straightforward one? Fulham have proven they're no side to write off with the points at Arsenal especially.
Yeah, and they gave City a really difficult game there last year in the Premier League. I think it was an injury time penalty from Erling Haaland, certainly a very late penalty from Erling Haaland, which wrapped up all 3 points. I think it's going to be a relatively straightforward one for City, if I'm honest. I know that Fulham have obviously recruited Raul Jimenez this summer, but I do think they're going to be weaker without Mitrovic this year. I think they'll struggle without his presence a little bit. Obviously, as you say, got a really good point at the weekend. I think they've got 4 points from the first 3 matches, which is a decent start from them. I don't think they'll be down near the relegation places come the end of the season, but yeah, I think they're going to be closer to that than the mid-table places they were last year. For City, I mean, I think it's just a case of just trying to roll on. They've 3 from 3 so far. I think they really fancy the chance of making it 4 from 4. Be obviously a fantastic start from them as they look to kind of retain the title. They've had a relatively kind opening run of fixtures. I think if I am being brutally honest, Newcastle being perhaps the exception to that. But yeah, I think it's well for City. I think they'll just want to get the window sorted, window out of the way, get Pep Guardiola back, know what squad they've got working with, and right, kind of at the start of September, let's really, take this season and start going with it. If they can go into that still with 12 points from the opening 4 games, then there'll be even more pleased, especially as City do tend to start the season a bit slowly. But yeah, I think it'll be a City win. I think it'll be a relatively straightforward one. I suspect actually City will keep a clean sheet in it as well. You mentioned Akanji earlier. They've got enough defensive options, even if he's not fit, to kind of roll into the game without him. And yeah, as I say, I think it'll be a relatively straightforward one for City.